And the war against Yomon continues, even with some fighting between Xibalba and Pangea drawn in. I'm still boosting construction for my secret future plans. Level 4 is not enough, I need level 6. And we are still fighting left. Oh, Yomon attacked that other fortress, and that is interesting. At least I can just go back and throw them off again, but it's annoying. And in the east, an army of Yomon passed by while I was marching south. I hate it when that happens. It's mostly because of the way movement works in the game. Essentially, if you have two armies marching into each other's province, there is a chance one of the armies will just bypass the other and show itself behind the other one. I don't think it's supposed to happen that often. It's just incredibly annoying when it happens. Here Gav is besieging the border fortress of Xibalbas that was next to me, and here there are some trolls annoying me. Ha! Trolls annoying me. That's great. Really funny computer Yomon. So anyway, I was supposed to help either Xibalba or Gav in this war, but funnily enough, thanks to AI Yomon making so much trouble, even if I wanted to, it would be a bad idea to spend time fighting an actual human being, because that takes a lot of thought, while fighting AI Yomon just takes a lot of fortitude. Here I see trolls stomping on my poor defenses. Of course they get some scratches themselves. Sadly, trolls can regenerate. My soldiers can't. In this case, a small, very small army loses some more units after punching through the province defense and then sits on another fortress in Greendale. It's annoying. And yes, the army is so small. If it weren't for said army to consist of mages and some really expensive elite units, I could have actually won this little battle, even though I just had some cheap defensive units. But anyway, annoyingly the small army was just large enough to survive, and as soon as morale fails, all my units run away, which means absolutely nothing since they were province defense. So in gameplay terms they don't really exist. On the other hand, my Raven of the Underworld has beaten the army over Redbud Grove. Let's take a look at this battle. Now this looks rather one-sided. Again, there are some mages who can potentially be trouble, and there are a bunch of archers and expensive elite units. The expensive elite units, of course, are basically fodder since they're small enough to be trampled. Like what just happened to those guys. My flying dudes are actually more like an obstacle right now. On the other hand, they're messing up the archers, which means my elephants have more time to get to them without getting scratched. And it's too late. Too many units trampled, and all those squadron failed their moral rolls and ran away. That easy it's sometimes to win a battle. Now I'm thinking the little army we saw were actually the survivors from this battle, and they just happened to be strong enough to actually win against the defenders of my other four. In this case, Xibalba loses a shit ton of units. We have to take a look at this battle. Xibalba attacks Pangea in Liratas. beast bats, large, sacred, demonic bats, and they can fly, which makes them awesome. Except if you see them on the enemy side, then they're incredibly annoying. Foul spawn, yeah, like half a dozen attacks, makes them really bad. Now Pangea has lots of his giant units here. And 2 pans. Probably to use magic to make their units stronger. So, while giant, tree-sized and larger units tend to be not that good, if you combine a lot of them with some strong mages to help them out, then suddenly you have the opposite. Then you have a giant battle axe moving into your enemy's army and tearing it apart. As you can see here now. The question is, of course, if this giant enraged battle axe can reach, and yes, it seems they are fucked. 1-2 turns and then they'll start hacking apart all those archers and crossbowmen. Then the battle will be over. Yes, now it's too late. Now they can't possibly do enough damage to send. And that was it. First squadron flees. The others are dying. Looks like Pangea has this battle in the bag. Yes, now another squadron is flying. Now the battle is officially over. Yes, sometimes large units can be good, especially if you have the magic to back up their drawbacks. And over there in the Mountains of Mist, I crushed a small AI army. Not that important, but it's an important victory in our battle. Well, let's take a look at how this battle won. It still looks like it was pre-scripted instead of just AI idiocy with some units before to get trampled and lots of crossbows behind them to make my elephants scared. Trouble is, of course, there aren't enough to really put a dent in. The only reason why I even have a losses is because, again, my flying units are a bit over eager and attack the same target as my elephants. Luckily, as flyers, they can move rather fast, so most of them only die to the enemy and not to the stomping feet of my mammoths. But as with the other battle we've just seen switch up between Xibao and Pangea, this one is already decided, since we're already mixing it up with the archers and crossbowmen at the end of the line. And now this little clot of units is basically encircled. I didn't even want them encircled, but I guess it's neat if a battle plan works out like planned, like this. Normally I tend to make a mess of things, so I'm always happy if it works like I planned. This battle starts with a giant cloud of arrows decimating my little bit of sacrificial archers. Then a real part of my army attacks. And thirdly, those knights learn that my mobs are still large enough to trample them. And Ashigarus with their long lances. Normally lances are good because they can attack before the mammoths can reach them. Trouble is, of course, if they can't do enough damage, then the mammoths will just trample through them the next turn, like it happened here. And now I have my Raptorians already putting lances into crossbowmen, while my mammoths are marching along the flanks and start another accidental encirclement like this one, which means if these units fly, they have to fly through attacking units on three sides, like like this, and a lot of them will die like this, and we have won another battle. Fine. Here Pangea against Xibalba. I think we already saw this one. Or not. No, the battle in Liratos Water was the one we saw. I think we haven't seen the other one. Anyway. Now I have to reorganize my units. The only annoying thing with the battle tactics I'm using is I'm losing a shit ton of my Raptorian warriors and have to constantly replace them, since I want to envelop the enemy and not let my elephants get enveloped themselves, so at least some non-elephant units have to be there. At least I have destroyed one invasion army and moved down to the south to where the enemy armies are coming from, so hopefully I can start sieging and them, which will prevent them from recruiting reinforcements, which will then make this war rather short. In the north I have now to deal with those stupid trolls. Luckily I'm still making most of my armies up in the north, so they don't have to go that far to stop the invaders, but it's still kind of a hassle for me, mostly because I hate rushing myself. I'm more the kind of player who likes to execute slow, complicated plans, and having to react to something like this is really annoying to me. Well, at least I can deal with it, but I just wish the enemy could just obey my orders and lie down and die according to my plans, instead of forcing me to adapt. Ugh. That means I have to think instead of just mindlessly following my own plans. Anyway, time to make a real army out of this clusterfuck here. All just because this one bunch of trolls got too far north for my taste. The real irony here is, of course, I would have to do this at a certain point anyway. I'm just annoyed because I have to do it a couple turns earlier than I normally would. Quite honestly, I hate scripting that much that I'm often leaving my entire armies unscripted just before I'm sure they will meet the enemy. So if you are fighting against me and say end up sieging a fortress with several hundred units in it, chances are I will just start forming an army out of them exactly one turn before I attack, or to be more precise, in the turn I want to attack, because of course battles happen in the time when the turns are calculated, so technically speaking, even if I want to attack immediately, it's the turn before, you know what I mean. So anyway, this little army seems to be almost ready, with the accompanying units on the flanks and the core of elephants in the middle. Now that I'm thinking about it, since this works out pretty well, in the future I should maybe try heavy cavalry in the same way. Normally I'm putting always heavy cavalry units on the flanks to try to get behind the enemy army to massacre the mages or leaders I can find. In practice this is rather tricky to achieve, so I'm thinking now, since my giant elephant hordes are working quite well, that in the future I probably should put my cavalry somewhere else in the middle and then just let them storm into the heart of the army to tear it apart, and then I'm leaving the fancy maneuvers to some flanking units instead. Or maybe I could just turn it around and let my heavy cavalry units stay at the flanks but instead put a real army in the middle instead of some second grade units just there to prevent someone from reaching my mages. But all those interesting ideas have to wait for the future, because right now it's not exactly like Human is making really intelligent choices here I have to constantly adapt to. It's more like, oh, I have to form my armies one turn before I wanted to. How shitty. Now you will really hear me curse if I have to do something like this against a real enemy. I have to do lots of thinking about. Then you can also sometimes see the embarrassing catastrophes when I'm getting too tired of this shit and start getting lazy. Well, now I have this huge squadron of waving dudes with swords and shields to protect. Then there are some archers. This is basically just some help army here. You might just have to be careful not to crowd out the middle too much in case I want to put elephants there in the future. That's something I have to remember. The problem is if you have several armies with squadrons all walking a certain way, you don't want to just mix them mindlessly if you aren't really sure that there is not a potential catastrophe, like, for example, mammoths suddenly stomping through the other half of your army, or let's say you're mixing death and nature magic and normal units and undead units, and the spells your undead mages cast are suddenly killing all your own side, stuff like this. So just be careful if you use a lot of magic or different units and mix the armies to get larger ones. Sometimes it works, but sometimes you have to take a look at what you are doing to prevent half your army dying to the other half. So, since most of my heavy duty armies are in the south, duking it out with Yeoman, I'm collecting some second tier units up in the north. As you can see, I'm moving some stuff to that in the north because I just know the AI will always strike the most obvious target. So the trolls will try to get there. They want to get an army in the way first. And another small army is marching from the west of my capital down south to finally exterminate that little speck of trouble sitting there. And then I just hope that I can crush the heart of Yeoman before all those forces in the south can do the same thing I do, and raise another huge army I have to deal with. After all, how should I say this? A huge army is basically an advantage on its own. Sure, they starve more easily, but if you can't deal with a huge lump of units just crushing you down, then that's a problem all on its own. I'm saying small and medium-sized armies are basically fodder if you have even just a few mages, but after a certain point you have to really put your thinking cap on, even if it's just a stupid AI. And if you think Yeoman is annoying here with hundreds of units, you haven't seen anything yet. The future will be ridiculous. At least we have some magic besides construction, but we are still somewhat off from my first research target. A bit annoying. I'm just hoping I can reach my first research goals before I have to fight another human being, because I'm guessing most of them have different research goals from me, and different in this case means they probably have some useful battle magic while I still have nothing. Well, let's see. The reason why I choose enchantment next to construction is because I have a lot of death mages, And enchantment has some nice spells for death magic. So at least I have something to use if I absolutely have to use my mages, which I don't want right now. But if I have to, at least I will have 1 or 2 useful spells instead of just standing there awkwardly doing nothing. And here you can slowly see a problem arising with this game. After a certain point, our armies are simply too large to make sense. All the formations I'm carefully putting here are slowly getting into each other's way, and after a certain point, basically everything will just one large orange block. The reason for this is, of course, well, even though we can have a game with that many resources and that many armies, it's quite obvious by now that the programmers of Dominions 4 never thought as far ahead. That's the reason the first gimmick game with these settings ended in multiple crashes, because the game couldn't deal with so large armies and the large scale battles in war which they were involved in. Now we are a few patches later, and I think the devs even mentioned in one patch they found a way to make large scale battles like this one looming in the future a lot easier, but still the entire game is not meant for thousands of units. As you can see, I have just a couple hundred units, and already most of the free space of my position map is already filled up. In the future there will be armies with 500, 1000 or even more units, and after a certain point you can't really do much anymore besides putting your mages to safety and then putting lots of units around them to protect them, and then hope that the large mass of orange left will do what they're supposed to do, and then hope for the best, essentially. The only good thing in this entire mess is all those tactics and strategies involving trying to get flyers behind the lines to your mages will stop being useful after you have too many units on the field, because after a certain point all your mages will be large clusters with tons of units around them who have simply no free space anywhere else. So if your flyers, if any flyers try to getting to them, they will just get stuck in the middle of your giant army, and as long as you're prepared to deal with this, you will deal with it. The counterpoint to this is, of course, hundreds or thousands of flyers, but after a certain point this will get ridiculous. I'm even hoping someone tries this, because if I have enough flyers over there and then summon enough stuff over there, I could get a chance to deal with the enemy mages and leaders directly. But that's all far in the future. Right now I'm just wasting time while my past me is carefully organizing another huge army. But for now, all we are doing is punching Yeoman into the face until hopefully the computer finally crumbles under our attacks. As you can see, there are a lot of forts, a lot of units, and the AI is crazy like a fox and will continue to rise armies and throw them at us relentlessly. So it's a little bit like fighting a really stupid Terminator at this point. Well, and I'm seeing my recording ends soon. So I, Libloini, have to say that's it really, and I'll see you next time when I'm trying to continue destroying my computer enemy here and hoping my still living enemies won't use this against me. But that said, the war between Gav, Pangaea and Xibalba really helps me out here, because it keeps my back free while I'm punching the stupid AI. Anyway, that was it for this time. Until next time, Libluini out.